Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So Dr. Rob is in transit. So this is live Q&A with Scott and Tami instead of Dr. Rob. So this is never therapy. This is never 12-step. This is just an opportunity for you to ask questions and get support around some things. As I mentioned, Scott and I are pretty open about having our recovery, and we will do our best to answer questions or give you resources. One of the things, Scott, he handles all of the curriculum that is part of the Seeking Integrity Los Angeles program, but also takes care of all the curriculum and any written thing, blogs and books and everything. So he's a really valuable resource from that standpoint, as well as his own personal. So without further ado, we're going to read through the questions, and so go ahead and throw them in the live Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer. So my husband has recently found out about my infidelity before the marriage and the lies. Besides that, I had kind of an emotional affair with a coworker recently, just me, not the person. Right now, my husband is bouncing back and forth from extremely angry to numb, and I can see all the effects on him. He talks about divorce and not wanting to do anything with me, and we don't talk. Right now, I'm still working with my coworker, and I'm trying to keep everything non-flirtatious. Should I tell my husband about times that I interact with him and at work? My husband has not seen him so far, but we are going to be at an event with a coworker is supposed to have a presentation. I know that my husband will probably compare himself with him during the whole time he is up there. My husband is definitely going to be there, but I don't know if I should go to that event or not. Would you give me some advice? I don't want to act as if this is how it is and you should accept it in order to gain power. So what are your thoughts, Scott?
Very interesting question. First I'll say that, a lot of affairs start out with either neighbors or coworkers or whatever, never intending to be an affair. They just sort of morph into friendship, and then something more than friendship, where you start sharing your intimacy with that person instead of with your spouse. And that sounds like a little bit of what's happening in this relationship. Since I'm filling in for Dr. Rob, I'll go back to his book, Out of the Doghouse. And basically the advice he gives in there is you need to break off all ties with all affair partners, whether they are emotional or they've gone sexual. And your spouse has a right to be very, very angry if you don't do that. And to the point where you may need to change jobs to get away from this person, or arrange it at your work so you don't see this person at all, and certainly not being away at conferences together. This is going to be a very difficult situation for your husband to deal with, to know that you have somebody there, whether it's emotional or sexual, that has been part of your life in a way that violates your relationship boundaries. It's going to be a tough one, and you're going to have to make some decisions about what's more important to you, your relationship or with your husband, or your job, or things like that. And I don't know what your financial situation is and how difficult it would be to switch jobs. So that comes into play, but I think you and your husband need to talk about it in a healthy way. Maybe if you have couples counseling, which I would highly recommend. Tami?
Yeah, and I was thinking, I'm thinking, I hear a lot. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Your video's freezing up.
Can you hear me? I don't care. So what I hear though, and we don't talk, and like you can't fix anything if we don't talk. And so,
Tammy's freezing up on us. Tami, you're frozen. She may have to log out and log back in. Yeah, that's what are you there?
Yes,
yeah.
And I switched my internet, so hopefully
okay.
This is so. But I probably
you froze up on what you heard was they don't talk, which is what I heard.
Yeah, and you can't fix anything if there's no communication. So my suggestion is work with a qualified therapist, who can help you just have the discussion. As Scott said, he's going to be mad. We talk about, it doesn't matter, male or female, but partners, have feelings and grieve and, all of that. There's a male betrayed partner drop-in group on Tuesday nights where guys who are in this situation have the ability to go and get support, around that. The not talking is going to get you nowhere. I 100% agree with Scott too. It's like, you're going to need to make some tough decisions. Is the job, is the husband, what is the most important things in your life? Not every relationship is supposed to stay together, but if you guys, have caring and some foundation that you actually really want to work towards, I'm always hopeful that, people can find a way back. It's, as Dr. Rob has said numerous times in webinars, it's never going to be the same. You're going to grieve the loss of what you had. And there's always now going to be this distrust, but lots of relationships find a path back to healing. And Scott mentioned Out of the Doghouse, and I've had a lot of women that have also read that, because it still is about how do you rebuild trust. As for the particular situation, we talk a lot about, not giving partners too much detail. This is an emotional affair, and it's not, it still is a problem. But if it's going to just be additional for your husband to fixate on, I don't know. I'm really torn, because I think honesty is important, but also going, that's the guy. And, that would be trouble, because I would be comparing and all of that type of thing too. So, I'm hopeful that if you say, I don't want you to get fixated on any particular person. I know, it was my mistake, or my, whatever, I'm working on it. But lots of people leave jobs or change jobs because they need to not be with that person. Now, if it's a pattern and you're going to go to the next job and have a similar situation, it really is dealing with the underlying issues. And then I would really highly suggest a higher level of help than just a qualified therapist. So hopefully that's a little helpful. Is it reasonable to believe my SA partner 1 year when he tells me that he's not had any slips or temptations to slip over the last year of his recovery, individual or group therapy only, no 12-step, etc. And I've asked him to attend 12-step programs. No temptations to slip. Wow, that's people here at it. I'm totally impressed. So sorry, snarky. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a recovering sex addict, and no. To have no temptations to slip.
You're not in the human race,
Right.
Everybody sees something.
To not slip, sure, maybe he hasn't slipped, but to have no temptations, that's kind of ridiculous. Now, that said, one of the things that we will tell sex addicts, because they want to know, what do I have to tell my wife or husband or whatever, and what do I not, is, thinking about it, you tell your sponsor. If you actually do it, you'd better come clean with your partner. So just because some hot whatever walks by and I think, how about, I have that thought, I try to banish that thought from my head. If I struggle with it, I'll pick up the phone and call my sponsor. That's, spouses tend to be more concerned about our actions. And to tell them every little thought that goes through your head when you're a sex addict, especially in your first year of recovery, there's no way your relationship's going to heal if your husband's telling you everything that goes through his head. But has he not been tempted? I find that one hard to swallow.
Yeah, and 100% agree that you absolutely could have not done any action. But the temptation, I still have random weird thoughts, that and I just go, I've been in recovery multiple decades, and it, having those thoughts go, I guess I don't know that those would be temptations. I guess it depends.
Yeah.
But, how you label it. But I also know that we as addicts are really good at labeling things, so it sounds better, so it feels a tiny bit disingenuous. And so, I think I would try to to go with the, he's not acted out. Great, and
Yeah, focus on that. If he hasn't acted out, that's good news.
Yeah. Individual and group therapy only, good. Like that would not have been enough for me. And, like Scott and I are both like way into our 12-step, stuff too. So, but I guess it probably depends. Everybody's different. I love the support of the community. I mean, Dr. Rob talks all the time about, attachment is the opposite of addiction. And so, if he's making really good attachments within that group therapy group, great. Are they connected outside of the group? Are they, most group therapy, they don't want you to be. So it's like you only talk and process in the group. And that to me is kind of a void, because then what, so there's only twice a week that, there's good stuff going in, and the rest of the time there's less connection. So, but like the last question, I think communication would be like, tell me what you mean when you talk about temptation, and tell me about you can't ask about the group, but just tell me about the group process. Are you connected with any of them, or what is the goals for this, whatever, I don't know, but communication maybe. So anything else, Scott?
Well, I would just add that group therapy tends to be once a week, and even if you have a great connection with the guys in your group, that's probably, for me, it is not enough. And I'm pushing 20 years sober now from sex addiction, and I need to contact with my peeps 3 or 4 times a week, at meetings and after meetings, and at least once a week I go to dinner afterward, and I have lunch with my sponsees, and I need to be involved with people who are dealing with the same stuff I am, and they help me as much as I help them. So
one of the things I was talking to somebody recently, I think it was this week or this last week, it doesn't matter. But if you spend as much energy on your recovery as you spent on your addiction, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So most sex addicts, porn addicts, whatever, spent multiple hours a day on their acting out, whether it's fantasizing about it, planning it, doing it, whatever. So so if you spend, particularly the first year or whatever, more than that, focusing and doing other good things, making good connections in the family and stuff like that, softball coach, whatever, I mean, if you're, but not all that, so as long as you're doing good recovery things, then you get back. I think one of the big things is, do you see a difference? Like, are you seeing a noticeable difference between the person that he was a year ago and the person now? That's pretty telling. And you add a year, you should see, particularly when you reflect back, you should see a transformation on some level, not 100%, not perfect.
Yeah, I would add to that, just there's been some research on porn addiction and the amount of time spent. I think Pat Carnes did it. And like the very low end of the scale for somebody who identifies as a porn addict is 11 hours a week. And most of them were at least double. And the vast majority were at least double that, which means 22 hours a week. And a lot of them were triple or more. So a porn addict and sex addict, they'll put in, it's a job. It's a full-time gig sometimes, in addition to whatever job they have. So yeah, if you can't find a little time for recovery, maybe you need to rethink the priorities.
Yeah, and it's really a priority. So, okay. So the next one, I've been told that SI, I assume that's seeking integrity, and prefers a short disclosure to spouses. Can you speak to that more? As a wife, I want to know a lot of what happens so I can understand everything and heal. Okay. All right. So what I hear you asking, and I want to clarify, so if I'm missing something with this, feel free to add more. But it's not about short, it's about succinct, in that the data is put together in a constructive way that isn't more traumatizing to partners. And that isn't just SI, that's within the trained therapy group, it isn't knowing every nitty gritty detail, it's, I had unprotected sex, approximately 12 times. I spent X amount of dollars on, am I acting out? It's more that kind of data, not, and, he or she was, was a redhead and whatever. I mean, it's not those kind of levels of detail. Now, some of the things, you need to know what's going to keep you safe. Like if it was unprotected sex, hopefully you've had, the testing on that. If it's somebody that, has is a friend or neighbor, like, Scott was talking about, you would want to know, because, that's one, so there are certain things you want to know. If you're working with qualified therapists to do the disclosure, they're going to guide the process. They're going to support you so that you get the information you need, and they're going to support the addict in putting together the information you need to have in a way that is the most helpful and least traumatic. So, but it really is working with qualified therapists to set that up. I often talk about the vomit disclosures where spouses are going, I need to know, or the addict wants to unburden themselves and they just want to clear the room. And so they are going, I'm going to tell you everything. And, then it's traumatizes it. You're traumatized. And like I said, with the vomit disclosure, you got the stench of this on you. So ideally it's creating a foundation for truth and, on which to build. So it's not about short. It's really about it being complete with the details you need, but not giving details you don't. Hopefully that makes sense. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, and disclosure, the opposite of the vomit disclosure is the death by paper cut. I give you a little, you find out something, I admit to it, but say nothing else ever happened, and then you find out something else on, 3 days from now, and it's re-traumatizing, you're just hitting the bruise with a hammer over and over and over. And disclosure is proper disclosure is a very formalized process. Usually there's a couples therapist, there's a therapist for the betrayed partner, there's a therapist for the addict, and the three of them work together to do the disclosure. Usually the betrayed partner's therapist will have the betrayed partner put together a list of questions. These are the things I need answered to feel safe. That will be conveyed to the addict's therapist, who will prepare a very formalized disclosure document that covers a specific areas, and there are worksheets to work them through that to make sure they hit everything. Then they come together in a couple session with both therapists, both clients, and the couples therapist. That disclosure document is presented, then there's a little Q&A. There's usually support lined up for both parties after the session. And then the betrayed partner will write an impact letter. This is what I heard, and this is how it affected me, and this is what I need you to do for me to feel safe and as if we can move forward in our relationship. And then there's a coming together, same process, again with support afterward. And then the addict will usually write an empathy letter saying, I understand this is what I did to you. This is what I'm going to do to help you feel safe and to help our relationship heal moving forward. And that is again shared in a couple session with all, usually 5 people in the room. And then usually within about a week after that, there's a polygraph test, so that the betrayed partner will know that the addict has told the entire truth. Now, addicts dread that polygraph until they take it and they realize, oh my God, I got all of this out. She or he knows everything now. We really can heal. And often they're excited about the polygraph once they realize I did tell everything. They're ready to take that polygraph. And then a lot of times they agree to follow-up polygraphs at 3 months and 6 months, because it gives them an extra layer of accountability. So it turns out that both parties really benefit from disclosure, but it should not be rushed, because you either end up with the vomit or the death by paper cut. I'm going
to tag in on this because Dr. Rob just did a professional consult group, and they talked about the polygraph a lot. And there are therapists that use it before the polygraph or before the disclosure. So is this everything, or are you being truthful? And they do that. But there's lots of therapists that don't use a polygraph, and there's no protocol, and it's gotten to be kind of standard practice. But there's we're looking for information within the industry of what is helpful and good. And the the problem with the polygraph is unless the therapist has worked with a polygrapher before, like not every polygrapher knows how to do this right. So there can be some problems with it too. So
There
the
are polygraph people who specialize
yeah.
in issues related to infidelity, and they know what to ask to get a proper reading.
But there's lots of them that are just former cops or whatever, and so it really depends. The other scenario with disclosure is sometimes couples are doing conjoint therapy, meaning like, Scott sees his therapist, I see mine, and then we see both therapists together for couples therapy, and then the disclosure is also with that. So that can be a really good scenario too. The point is have good qualified professionals that know what they're doing, that have done this before. And, or some of them, even if they're newer doing it, that they are getting support from qualified supervisors to help guide the process. Then you get the result, that is helpful for your relationship and, on which you can build. So.
Yeah, a good disclosure with a good polygraph is brilliant. A bad disclosure with a good or bad polygraph, or a good disclosure with a bad polygraph, not so great.
Right. You want to have the detail set and a little bit of patience, like there are people that want to do it in the first week. Dr. Rob has also talked about, like when he was, was doing, regular sessions with the organization in Los Angeles, he had a specified period of time, and it was within the first few months, as long as the addict was able to, be able to put those things together, on their timeline, et cetera, it shouldn't be you've waited 2 years, then it's like, well, is he still acting? Because you want him also to have stopped him, I'm saying. You want the addict to have stopped the behavior. And so if the behavior is going to keep going, then you're going to get the paper cut, where you're.
And the addict is not prepared to give disclosure after a week or two. They don't know the truth in they're so filled with denial that they don't know the entire truth of what they've done. They're still busy lying to themselves. If they're lying to themselves, they can't possibly tell you the truth. They have to get far enough along in their recovery so that they can tell the truth to themselves, so they can tell it to you. And that's going to take probably a couple of months, anywhere from maybe 2 to 6 months, depending on the addict. I mean, 6 months is a long time to wait for a disclosure. I sure as hell wouldn't want to. But it usually happens in the 2 to 3 month mark.
And there are situations where your safety, like there is something. So there are pieces where it's like you're getting this much disclosure because you need to know this.
I have an STD. You need to go get tested.
Yeah, you need to get tested.
That should be therapist facilitated.
Right, or it's going to be on the news tonight. That's the kind of stuff that you kind of need to know. So, okay, so I've shared a few weeks in a row on starting to date a man. I'm a single female and SLAA. This is my first sober dating experiences. I've been on 3 dates with this guy. He is nice and respectful, but I realized yesterday that I feel more like a buddy than a romantic attraction. I don't know whether that means I'm not interested in him like that, or whether this is just what sober dating means. Should I feel some romantic sexual attraction lost? So this is like the soap opera. I want to know what the next chapter is. But Scott, I'd love to hear your input on this.
Again, I'll give you Dr. Rob's example. If the other person doesn't rev your engines, they're probably not going to be long-term partner material. I mean, you need to feel some sense of physical attraction to them. That's, we call them romantic and sexual relationships for a reason. I would also say fairly early in SLA recovery, I'll use my sex addiction recovery. I mean, I was really, really gun shy and found it hard to be attracted to anybody because I was so afraid. And it was okay to have some practice dates and things like that. And it's okay, there are studies that say, you should go on, coffee dates at least with 20 to 25 people before you find somebody that you really connect with. So I applaud you for getting out there and dating. I applaud you for being vulnerable. I applaud you for getting to know somebody and recognizing that, I'm not feeling hot for this guy or girl or whoever it is. I think it's a guy. And that's okay. You don't have to fit a square peg into a round hole. You can look for I don't want to use the word.
The right fit.
Not on, yes, thank you. Not on this webinar. We're not.
Yeah, exactly. The right fit. So yeah. But I think it's important to have, a little bit of sizzle, but I think it does change a little bit, in recovery. But I mean, it's terrifying to go out there and date when you're like sober, it is very challenging. So, I again applaud that you're putting yourself out there and practicing, and that's what all the stuff is dating is just practicing. So it's
and this is probably going to be a learning experience for you, because to move from love addiction, which is all about the sizzle, I mean, you're not addicted to the sex, you're addicted to the sizzle. That's what a love addict is. So you got to find that happy medium, and usually with love addicts, when the sizzle isn't there, poof, I'm on to the next one. So you got to find that happy medium where you can develop true intimacy and a bond with somebody, but you still need a little sizzle.
So the next question, I'm a year and a half from finding out about my husband's 20+ year porn addiction, one emotional affair, and he also had 2 different hookup sites on his phone, which he says he never was going to hook up, just curious. He said he has stopped all of the above, saying he has no triggers, desires, etc. My problem is he tells me he has no idea why he acted out. The only reason he gives is selfish and entitled. His narcissistic behavior was still horrible up until I moved out last week. Now he is saying he's changed. He has only had 2 therapy sessions and refuses to go back, was involved in Forrest's drop-in group on Sunday nights a few times when he connected to a sponsor, but then since won't communicate with him. As a matter of fact, he hasn't responded to his texts. Your thoughts?
You go first.
Well, I almost laughed at I've changed. It's been a week. I haven't done anything different, but you left, and so now I'm changed. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make light of any of this stuff. It's addiction, and it drives me crazy. So sometimes I have to just go, of course we've changed. It's been a week. So, and I'm not willing to do anything. I'm sorry, but he's not willing to do anything. You've made it clear, what you were looking for, and he's not willing to do any of that. So, I wish he would come to Seeking Integrity Los Angeles. Those guys are really good at getting to the underlying stuff, because, and you've heard it on the webinars before too, it's like, the acting out is just a symptom. It's like, it's the underlying stuff, and all addicts are narcissists. As Dr. Rob has also said, very few actually get into the category of being diagnosed as narcissists, but an active addict is a narcissist. And stopping, and I've shared this before, in stopping the behavior, in sex addiction, it's like the alcoholic that's white knuckling it and going, I'm not doing it. But, then they're a dry drunk. They haven't really changed, and they don't have any tools to use to do life differently. So take care of yourself is what I want to say, is take care of yourself, get support for yourself. And, unless he's willing to actually get help, and that wouldn't just be going to a drop. I love Forest Group. It's great support, but that's therapy or residential treatment, but it's, it takes a lot more than that. So, but I'm really sorry. Scott?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I would say trust your gut, trust your instincts. If your gut's saying he hasn't changed at all, I made the right decision to move out, trust your gut. I will also add that, kind of tacking on to what Tami said, sex addiction is not about sex. Sex addiction is not about the pleasure of sex. Sex addiction is about emotional escape. Addicts of all types, not just sex addicts, when we have a feeling that we don't want to feel, which is any feeling, we turn to our addiction it's a psychological escape. If I'm stressed out, I'll have 4 or 5 cocktails, and guess what? I'm not stressed out anymore. Now, when I wake up tomorrow with a headache, I'm going to be stressed out, and I'm going to have a headache. And it's kind of the same with sex addiction. But when I was an addict, I thought I didn't have any problems, and that if I just stopped these behaviors, my life would get better. And then I stopped the behaviors, and my life got worse because I didn't have a coping mechanism to deal with the craziness in my head. And it sounds like that's what you're dealing with, is somebody who is, as Tami said, a dry drunk. And dry drunks are really unpleasant, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever. We still have all of our underlying issues and that huge desire to escape, but we don't have our go-to coping mechanism. So we're going to be all over the place. Yeah, and it's not fun for the people around us.
Well, and I'm going to give a little plug for Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, because, like, it's a process. And like we said, if you're going to, therapy, individual therapy and group therapy, every week, and doing 12-step and senior sponsor and you can get a long way in recovery. But it's going to take a long time, and you're going to, while you're trying to not act out in whatever addiction form you are using, you don't have the coping skills. And one of the things that I think is so great about coming to Seeking Integrity Los Angeles is you're taking a 2-week pause, and you're getting rid of, a lot of the shame and the guilt and all the, the terrible feelings. We don't fix everything in 14 days, but then we're also giving you tools and a plan so that when you leave, you're in a different place that could take you months and months to get to, by doing a lot of the right stuff, outside, of treatment. I think it's also helpful to just be able to focus on treatment instead of like, I got to go to work and the kids and oh, and I got to do my recovery stuff. So I think that there's a lot of benefit to that. And I realize not everybody needs treatment. Not everybody, can get away, can afford it, whatever. But for those that can, man, it sure, it's a game changer. So,
yeah, one of the primary goals of a residential treatment is to break through the addict's denial. And that's often what people leave treatment with, is an understanding, oh, I do have a problem and I do need to do some work. If residential treatment can accomplish that and give them a plan for doing the work, residential treatment has done its job and done it well. If you can get more than that, great. But a lot of people are so deeply steeped in denial when they show up in treatment. I don't have a problem. I'm only here because my wife won't let up. 3 days later, they're bawling their eyes out because they know they have a problem.
Yeah. So a continuation of this, my husband tells me that since he hasn't abused me in a week, since he changed for me not to bring up the past because it frustrates him and makes him angry. So I'm going to just keep holding my line, is like, he is unwilling to change. He's trying to point it back to you. Prodependence that Dr. Rob wrote is all about, it, and he talks about this too on all the webinars. It's like, it's not about you. It's about him and his addiction, and addiction has him hijacked, and he's not willing to, to get off the crazy merry-go-round. So I think he's making his choice clear. Scott?
That is gaslighting. I'm blaming you for my behavior. I'm manipulating you. I'm justifying. I'm rationalizing. And it's abusive to you. The term is gaslighting. And yeah, you don't have to put up with that. It is a form of abuse.
So, continuation for the work situation. It's impossible for me to quit my job right now. My husband sees me. The whole problem, is not interested in getting involved in anything related to my problem in therapy. He has found out everything through my journal. Ooh, in the worst possible way. I hate discovery like that. So I'm still not working with a qualified therapist. I'm in damage control situation. So it's not about your husband getting therapy to fix him. I say this to all the partners. It's about getting support for all those terrible feelings, the betrayal, the trauma, all of that stuff. It's like having a safe place to process that is helpful. And, if you don't get qualified help, you're not talking, he's not willing to get support. So you're not getting help. What is your plan for moving forward in a different manner? You're going to be, I think, stuck. And then you ask if your husband goes, well, maybe you guys work at the same place. And so he would go because I'm like, if it's your work thing, does he also work there? So that's why he would go. And I probably would do that. Wouldn't you? What do you think, Scott?
Um, yeah, I don't know. What I would say is, as far as betrayed partners getting help, there's often a reaction about that betrayed partners have. Why do I need to go to therapy? I'm not the one with the problem. And my response to that is always, you're right. You're not the one with the problem, except you're married to a problem, and you deserve to get support
Yes.
so that you can work through this. It's not you have to, you deserve to. And I think reframing it that way often helps betrayed partners understand that, you've just been run over by a truck. The person you trusted the most just stuck a knife in your back and twisted it. It's the worst possible betrayal. You deserve to get some support. Whether your partner does or not, you can't make your partner get well any more than your partner can make you go to therapy. But you can decide to go to therapy for you to get the support that will help you weather a terrible thing. If your partner's willing to also do the same, and then your relationship can heal.
Yeah, but what I hear is you guys are stuck, not talking. He won't get support. You're not getting help. So, so deciding if you guys both work in the same place and that is the issue, I might lean towards that. But I would really ask a qualified therapist who's in your life and knows you better. But what's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So you guys are doing the treadmill every day of and that's no good for either of you.
So Sue Johnson would call it a toxic relationship dance. You both know all the steps and you just keep dancing it, even though neither one of you is enjoying it.
Yeah. Okay, next question. My question is, how do I start building my wife's trust in me after she found out about my multiple affairs over 11 years? I've been in SAA for 3 years and have almost 7 months of sobriety. I believe I've built up zero trust in this time frame, so I really don't know how to build trust other than stop lying. That's a really good start. Honestly, I'm not being snarky there. We are currently separated.
The first step is full therapeutic disclosure, like we discussed earlier. The second step is ongoing, rigorous honesty. Tell the truth, tell it faster. The third step is build some empathy for what your partner is going through. Try to understand the damage done. If you are willing to work on the relationship and your partner is willing to work on the relationship, there's hope. If not, the damage sometimes is too much. Sometimes relationships end over this. Most of the people that we work with, the relationships don't end, and often they end up being stronger than ever because the couple learns to, we'll go back to this word, communicate. In ways,
honestly, communicate honestly.
They become vulnerable. They learn to tell the truth to each other. They learn to hear the truth, and they develop a much stronger intimate bond than before. But rigorous honesty, being honest, staying sober, that's a good start. Empathy, you need to make sure your partner knows everything, and be completely transparent in everything. You can see my bank statements. You can see my credit card statements. Here's the password to my phone. Here's my social media. You can look at my phone and my computer anytime you want. Those are things that may have to happen. However inconvenient or annoying they are for you as the addict, you may have to do those things to rebuild trust. And
we in recovery are going, yay, you've got 7 months. But your partner's going, you lied to me for 11 years. So like if you do the math, it's like and even I've been in SAA for 3 years. So that means for 2 years and 5 months, you were going to SAA, but hadn't gotten traction in recovery. So like if you kind of look at it that way, I think it makes sense that your wife is like, if you haven't read Out of the Doghouse yet, please do so, because it's about rebuilding trust, and it's about do what you say. If you say what you mean, don't lie. If you lie, which then admit it, like Scott said, as fast as possible. Don't delay. And, it's going to take time though. But I mean, like you're 7 months in, after 11 years. So,
and we get the timeline question a lot. One of the things that Rob writes in Out of the Doghouse is, it's going to be a year of sobriety and rigorous honesty before the relationship, before you really start to see some trust rebuilding. And you had 2 years and 3 months or 5 months or however long, in recovery, where it sounds like maybe there were some slips and slides. Now you've got 7 months. You can take that year and probably expand it to 18 months before you really start to notice trust rebuilding in the relationship. Doesn't mean the relationship can't heal. Doesn't mean it can't be better than ever. It just means continue what you're doing, and rigorous honesty all the time.
So the next question, I totally understand that addiction is about escaping, but could it also be about control? Like controlling emotions, people, situations, even if the control is built in denial?
Yes. When we say escape from emotional discomfort is controlling your emotional discomfort, it's absolutely about controlling feelings, thoughts, other people. Sometimes addictions are about controlling other people or your interactions with other people. Totally about taking control of a life that you can't control.
So my mantra many times was the serenity prayer, and it's about God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, which I learned was everything outside of me, but the things that I can control it's just my actions and reactions. I had learned that was all I had control over. I couldn't control anything except how I reacted to it. And that was very helpful for me. But I learned that in recovery because yes, I was absolutely trying to control, all things, including emotions. For me, it was completely about numbing out. Like when I first experienced emotions after I got sober, it was terrifying. Even if they were good, it was terrifying. I really was very uncomfortable. So yes.
I cried constantly for my first year of sobriety because I couldn't handle anything.
I think I just freaked out a lot. So here's a great question. So if we don't have our addictive coping mechanism, what can we do? Sorry, but many of us can't afford to attend a treatment program. I'm sort of pissed when I'm hearing this. I need something that will help me make some progress. I'm ready to just give up. So, therapy, good therapy, individual and group. Lots of 12-step meetings, not just, once occasionally. I was emailing with somebody today, and they were like, I'm going to try to go to a 12-step meeting. And my experience with try is you either commit or you won't. But going to getting a sponsor. Lots of people get into recovery and stay in long-term recovery just doing 12-step, and I really think therapy is important to get, to some of those things. There's lots of people that just go to 12-step, I would, if you are as rigorous at your recovery and going to, 12-step meetings, all these resources are free. We've got live webinars, we've got a zillion previously recorded, we've got the podcast. There's lots of recovery stuff that you can just be taking in and gleaning new information from. So a treatment program is faster, that's all. But it doesn't mean you can't, the path is still, is still there. You can get there. It's finding healthy connections to recovery things. What do you think, Scott?
12-step meetings are free. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And that is where I find my connection, is in 12-step meetings. And they are free. They pass the basket. Most people put in $1 or $2. You don't have to if you broke. Most therapists will work on a sliding scale. I know people who've gone to therapy for years paying $5 a session.
If that's really your case, because therapists work really hard. So, yeah. With
great therapists. The other thing, I lost my train of thought. I had something else really important. What was the question again? Can you read it?
I'm pissed that I how am I supposed to do this?
I remember.
Okay.
I'm going to assume you're a sex addict since you're on sex and relationship healing at a webinar, and it's Rob's who's specially with sex addiction. One of the things we do with sex addicts is we create what we call a circle plan or a boundary plan. So picture 3 concentric circles. The middle small circle is, these are my problem behaviors: porn, affairs, strip clubs, prostitutes, mixing cocaine with, porn binges or whatever. You list your problem behaviors. The next circle, this middle circle, is your slippery behaviors and your slippery emotions. If I'm arguing with somebody, if I'm in a 12-step program and skipping the meetings, if I'm lying to anyone about anything, I'm just giving you some in my middle circle, and just feeling depressed or anxious or stressed or whatever. So these are slippery things that will lead us into that middle circle. And then the important thing for this particular question is this outer circle, which we put things that we can do instead of our addiction. Healthy coping mechanisms we can turn to: reading, talking to a friend, going to a 12-step meeting, going for a bike ride, playing with the kids, painting the house, painting a picture, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. Now, if you're like me, when I got into recovery, I couldn't think of anything for my outer circle. And I was told to, well, what did you enjoy before you became an addict? Well, before I became an addict, I was like 12 and 13. And, I liked to play basketball, and I liked to play, I liked to play sports, and I liked movies, and I loved to read. And then okay, do those things. I joined a basketball league. I joined a softball league, tore my leg up, but that's a whole other story. Started reading books. I started writing books. I wrote some short films. I did a lot of things instead of my addiction. And for me, that was very, very important. But the most important thing I did instead of my addiction was I spent time with other people in recovery. And most of those came through 12-step meetings. Please go to 12-step meetings.
Yes, I agree. And all the free resources here. So I'm going to switch over to the chat. There's a question. So this person writes, during an online therapy session, my therapist leaned back to grab something and I noticed a low cut top. Mind you, it was not revealing, just only low cut. I told her about it, how it made me feel, and I was getting excited. Needless to say, I was quite embarrassed and apologized a number of times. So the question is, my first reaction whenever someone, man or woman, talks, before we go further, I want to say thank you for telling your therapist. That gives your therapist a chance to talk about that. There's terms, transference, countertransference, all that stuff. So thank you for being willing to be honest with your therapist. That's my first thing. Okay. My first reaction whenever someone, man or woman, talks about their previous sexual encounters or ex-boyfriends, hookups, etc., on anything from a book to a podcast to a real life, doesn't happen that often. It seems to trigger this feeling driven by the fact that I haven't had any of those experiences and how I'm behind the pack by 15 plus years. This person's in their late 20s. Mid to late 20s. I now know I've missed out because I believed and still do that to an extent is no one would choose me when there are better options out there. How can I stop feeling bad whenever someone talks about their sex life? I feel inferior. Unmute.
That's a great question. And we run into that a lot. I'll use my 12-step group, which I mostly go to SAA meetings, which is Sex Addicts Anonymous. And there are a couple, mostly younger guys, who come to those meetings who've never had sex. All of with an actual, face-to-face person. Everything is online. Everything is porn. And they have this feeling like, how can I be a sex addict if I've never actually had sex? I go back to sex addiction is not about sex. Sex addiction is about using sexual fantasy and sexual behavior, either alone or with others, as a way to numb out, escape, control, all the things we talked about earlier. It's like alcohol. It doesn't matter if I'm drinking beer or champagne or 2020 Mad Dog or super expensive vodka. It's a means to an end, and what's important is the goal of it, which is to not feel. So yeah, and you know, as far as the shame, you know, a lot of sex addicts have shame. You know, shame is not something we're born with. We're taught shame by other people, usually our parents, sadly. And it makes shame, there's a difference between shame and guilt. Guilt means I did something that I regret doing. I think in the future I'll behave differently. Shame is there's something horribly wrong with me, and because of that, I can't help how I behave or the things I do, so I'm not even going to try. You know, shame is just a toxic cesspool. Guilt is motivation for change. Shame will suck you down into the abyss. The only way to really combat shame is to talk about it out loud with people who know you and care about you and can debunk the lies that are coming, because shame is lies. Everybody is worthwhile. Everybody, you know, my friend Charlie he's a Chevy chaser. The bigger the better. You know, I don't want to use this term because it's not very polite, but you know, as he says, there's a lid for every pot, and there is. And you know, a lot of the guys Charlie has dated he's gay, over the course of his lifetime are guys who never thought they would have a relationship, and then they met Charlie, and he is so hot for them they can't believe it. But he had, you know, they often had to work through the shame so that they could open up and let Charlie in. So we need other people to heal from shame. We learn shame from other people. We learn eventually to do it all by ourselves, which sounds like what you're doing. But we still need other people to heal our shame.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, it's really challenging if you're comparing yourself all the time, like, I'm 15 years behind, or I'm this, you know, like, you are where you're at, you know, and just like going, this is where I'm at, and I'm going to start here. You know, we were talking to someone earlier who's like just starting on the dating journey after, you know, recovery. And so, you know, like that's where this person is at. And we celebrate all of those things. So, yeah, like, if I spend all my time comparing, there's always tons of people that are way better than me, and you know, some that are worse. I hate to use those terms, but you know, like, I just go, this is who I am. You know, I'm most hours of most days, I'm pretty happy with the person I'm becoming, and you know, I continue to try to improve. And so you're at a spot where you don't have those skills yet, but you can learn them, and like Scott said, you can learn them from other people. So it's one of those where you know, it's just a process, and getting support around that. He did add, it gets, another thing is when a coworker I like mentions her boyfriend, I start thinking about their private life and how it's not with her. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm like, and it isn't, but you know, so is there a way to go, but I'm going to go look for somebody that I do want to be with and that wants to be with me. And like the dating process, you know, Scott mentioned it could take 25 dates before you find someone, you know, that is a good fit, and just be patient and willing to go through lots of dates. So the next question, are obsessions different than focusing on something for a long time? It seems obsessing about something that has to do more with the inability to keep both thoughts and emotions in perspective. But how can you tell if you're keeping your thoughts and emotions in perspective, specifically in terms of relationships? What are your thoughts, Scott?
You know, obsession is, it's kind of an out of control preoccupation with something, anything, food, alcohol, sex, a person, you know, the impeachment trial, whatever. People naturally will obsess. If it starts controlling your life, if it starts causing problems, then it's a problem. You know, if you start having negative life consequences, you need to make some changes and step back from the obsession. It's very hard to do. And people do horrible things in an obsession. They stalk people. They, you know, it's, you know, the difference between obsession and just thinking about something a lot, I think it's kind of a fine line. It's what it's doing to your life.
Yeah. Yeah,
and,
like
and the lives of the people around you.
yeah, if I'm focusing on, work or a certain problem or whatever, I'm usually trying to work it out or, whatever. But obsession is, it is like Scott was saying, compulsive and relentless. And, so I do, I do distinguish between the two. And, I can get over focused on something, but, I can be pulled out, where obsession, it's tougher to, like it's kind of always niggling there. So
Yeah,
we have
and an obsession is pulling you away from your life.
So we have time for one more question, and we have one more question. So I'm a betrayed partner in a 40-year marriage. Discovery was 3.5 years ago. Formal disclosure 2.5 years ago. He would relapse the first 3 years, lying about them multiple times. He supposedly in recovery the last 7 months, going to SLA, meeting his sponsor and a therapist once a week. I feel some change happening, but he will not allow me any involvement with his recovery plan. He disclosed a few months ago that he is now bisexual, but wants the marriage to work and is committed to me only. He watches gay movies, which he refuses to stop watching. Went to a gay bar a few times. He says he's never been intimate with a man in our marriage. I'm struggling to understand all of this and feel very confused and further traumatized. How can a mixed orientation marriage with sex and porn addicts survive? That's challenging.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. Those relationships, with mixed orientation can work, but they tend to work when everything is out in the open up front. When you start dating, oh, by the way, I'm bisexual. And when there are boundaries in place about what is acceptable to both partners and what is not acceptable to one or both partners. And, if you're in a relationship with somebody and he wants the marriage to work, you ought to respect the fact that you're not comfortable with him looking at gay movies. I'm assuming that's gay porn, and going to gay bars. I mean, to me, that's cheating. I mean, a straight guy looking at porn, his wife thinks it's cheating. Why would a bisexual guy looking at porn, his wife, not think it was cheating? It's cheating. It's not within the boundaries of your marriage vows, most likely. And the expectations that you have for your relationship. So it goes back to communication. You guys are going to have to, if it's going to work, you're going to have to talk about it and work it out and set boundaries that you can both live with.
Yeah, I'm 100% with Scott too. I'm 100% confident if I started hanging out at bars right now, my husband would be less than happy with me. That would be outside the boundaries. Whether it was, gay or straight, it wouldn't matter. That would not be okay, if I was going there. So a lot of communication, and the marriages that I've seen work, typically it is, I have these feelings, but I value this relationship and I'm going to live within these parameters. I'm going to, like Scott said, if it was set up in advance or whatever, or you guys can come to some sort of understanding, for a more open marriage, et cetera. But if not, and that ultimately is up to the two of you, but if not, then, either he, agrees to live within the parameters of your agreed upon, and heterosexual, monogamous, whatever it is you're saying, a relationship. And I would, I would perceive that I'm really interested if his sponsor and therapist are all okay with, the movies and the, and the bars and things like that. So it would be, interesting to know that as well. So, and she adds, not porn movies on Duco and Amazon. I'm not familiar with those, Scott, but anyway.
So just gay movies, but still, he's watching gay movies. It's that can't feel good for you if he's watching men have relationships with each other. So
yeah. That to me would feel like I'd be really wondering, when Scott talked about those circles and things like that, I'd be wondering where those behaviors are, and ultimately, if he wants to rebuild trust with you, he needs to be trustworthy with you and doing the things that are agreed upon your relationship specifically. So
yeah, I mean, and the big thing is to define your relationship boundaries, and every relationship is different. Some couples are perfectly fine with an open relationship or a semi or whatever. Other couples are not. And, the two of you have to define what the mutually agreed upon relationship boundaries are. And the addict will always try to manipulate and coerce and threaten and everything when boundaries are being set. So it's best to do it with a therapist who can point that out.
Scott, we're out of time. And thank you so much. Happy birthday, but thank you so
Welcome,
much for
thank you.
filling in. He got the phone call going, you do anything in about an hour? And he graciously agreed. So grateful for you to do this. It was fun. We haven't done this together.
I know, it's been a while.
Yeah, so
All
we'll
right.
sub in again. So thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Night, everybody.